Hi guys, welcome back to Rancor Reptiles. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about genetic lines and ball pythons and possibly even other reptiles. But we're going to be focusing mostly on ball pythons. Now if you like these videos, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. If you didn't, leave a dislike, but let me know what I can do to better the channel. I'm always open for some very good constructive criticism. So let's get this started. Now, genetic lines are very different than line breeding. Okay, let's get that separated. Now, you can develop a very good gene line through line breeding. Line breeding is basically breeding a pair of snakes, getting the offspring, and breeding them back into the parents to try to exacerbate certain features like blushing, coloration, patterns, stuff like that. That is line breeding. A genetic line is basically just a line of a certain gene that has certain characteristics. You can produce genetic lines from line breeding. However, you don't necessarily need to line breed to get a genetic line. Okay? I confused maybe some people, but I think this is fairly simple stuff. Now, a good example of this would be pastel. Pastel is in everything. It's everywhere, and it's very much like herpes. It's hard to get rid of. It's in everything. People are trying to phase it out. However, I think it looks pretty darn nice. Pastel, however, has tons of dimorphism. There are people that kind of focused in on that early on when pastel was a thing, and they produced different types of pastel. If you didn't know, pastel actually comes with like different lines called pastel blondie, citrus, jungle. I'm missing a couple. There's a couple more that I'm forgetting. Put them down in the comments if you know them. But pastel has quite a few lines. But most people kind of don't differentiate. A good example of this would probably be the two pastel clowns I've produced this season. Now, the first clutch, I produced a pastel clown male. You can see him here. He is the less blushed out animal. He is the bigger one. And he is not very blushed out. He does have some blushing, but he doesn't have a lot of it. And his coloration isn't very vibrant pastel. Now compare him to the female I produced this current season, and it's the female to the right. And that animal has tons more blushing on the dorsal, on the head. The head looks absolutely whited out. It looks different. However, I believe both of these animals are just plain pastel clowns. Now, the difference in between these two snakes can be chopped up to maybe dimorphism. Pastel can affect snakes very differently. Sometimes it jumbles up patterns, sometimes it doesn't. However, I believe it all comes down to the different lines of pastel you have in your collection. There's certain lines running everywhere because people don't differentiate, right? So maybe my pastel clown on the right has blondie, and the pastel on the left has jungle or citrus or whatever. Very different lines of pastels will cause different effects, right? So if you as a breeder, I'm not sure how far along you are, maybe you're extremely advanced, or maybe you're just a novice that picked up their first ball python. If you can get a handle of which type of pastel you have in your collection, it's much easier for you to know what type of animals you're going to be producing. If you have a blondie, you're going to expect animals with a lot more blushed out heads, and you can kind of expect that in your pairings. If you have, a certain line of pastel that doesn't have tons of blushing, maybe that will help out in retaining the animal's coloration into adulthood because that blushing won't brown out. So it is in your best interest to kind of figure out what type of pastel will kind of, the lines of pastels that are in your collection. If you don't have any pastel, that doesn't necessarily mean you can avoid line issues altogether. But let's bring that back a little bit. So let's say if someone was really dedicated to pastel, I'm almost certain they were able to selectively breed certain individual animals and produce a line of pastel that has really high amounts of blushing, high expression of coloration, and have that be named something. And then on the opposite side, have an animal that really doesn't brown out, that has minimalized blushing, that has really nice deep darks, but still has a pastel-like overtone to it. I'm almost certain that can be done. However, because pastel isn't everything and it's not very expensive, or there's not a lot of money into it, there's not a lot of incentive for people to do this. Now, in the beginning, there were some people that did this, and that's how we still have some certain lines of pastel running, like Citrus and Blondie and all that good stuff. So if you are going to buy a pastel and the person has the line attached to it, don't get rid of the line name. Keep it. If you breed animals and you produce pastels, make sure that line name sticks with that animal, to make sure that the handle that has already been placed on pastel isn't gone altogether, right? So moving on from pastel, another really good example would probably be Orange Dream. Orange Dream is a very nice gene. It affects coloration and to a certain point pattern. I've noticed that really nice high intensity Orange Dreams have a lot more reduced pattern than normal Orange Dreams do. Now, what is high intensity? High intensity was coined by Ozzy Boyds, and he produced this really nice, really high intensity Orange Dream. Now, if you have a regular Orange Dream compared to a high intensity, you can really see the difference. Now, Ozzy Boyds created this high intensity line just by selectively breeding. He might have line bred a bit. However, he didn't do it to a point where high intensity has genetic defects. High intensity Orange Dream has no genetic deficits compared to regular Orange Dream, which is really awesome. But you know, the difference in quality is just amazing. Obviously, there's going to be a big difference in price as well. A high intensity Orange Dream is going to be worth much more than a regular Orange Dream, simply because the high intensity looks way more amazing and people want that, you know, the difference in saturation much more, right? If I'm going to go for an Orange Dream, I want something that really screams orange at me, and the high intensity does exactly that. So Ozzy Boyds did a very good job at producing these very beautiful animals, and now it's just a matter of, you know, getting some money into it. Now, there are some genetic things going on with Orange Dream I'm going to be covering in a different video with high intensity, but this is just kind of like an overview and exposure of there are different genetic lines out there. If you are in the market for Orange Dream, I highly encourage to go for the high intensity, the good looking stuff. However, if you're on a budget, there are some good looking regular Orange Dreams out there as well. As always, make sure, especially for these type of things, to ask pictures of the parents to kind of see how the Orange Dream is gonna age. Now, talking about aging, moving on to the third and final gene I really want to talk about in this genetic line video is Desert Ghost. Now, Desert Ghost, as it's known today, there are two lines, the Desert Ghost and the Enhancer. They're both compatible. You breed an Enhancer to a Desert Ghost, and you come out with offspring that look like Desert Ghosts or Enhancers, right? So they're compatible. However, if you go on MorphMark and you just take a look around, you can tell. You can visibly tell from page to page, animal to animal, there are differences in Desert Ghost. It's not coined yet. People are still, they kind of refer to everything as Desert Ghost or Enhancer/Enhancer. There are some animals by itself, plain Desert Ghosts, that look absolutely clean, immaculate. They're vibrant. They don't have any pastel or fire in them. They look absolutely fantastic. And then you have other animals that look a little cleaner. They don't have like very much interference as well. However, there is a difference. One of them expresses like really high, if you mix pastel into them. Some of them express like really high intensity yellows, while others are more toned down. So that's why it's very important, even though there are no official lines for Desert Ghost slash Enhancer yet. For Desert Ghost, it's pretty important for you to know what type of line you're working with. Now, I have Vendetta in the back. She is a super pastel and she Desert Ghost, and she is a high saturation Desert Ghost. She produces a lot of yellows. Now, because of super pastel and Enchi, she went from an extremely vibrant, extremely highlighter yellow, saturated, vibrant yellow, into like a white hot animal. Now I'm hoping that when she breeds out and I kind of get a better look at her line of Desert Ghost, that she's a more saturated, clean animal. There are some animals on Morph Market that aren't as saturated and aren't as clean. So even though there are no official lines for Desert Ghost as of yet, like I keep saying, be sure to ask, especially for DG, what the parents look like. If you have a handle on what the parents look like, you'll be able to have a better idea of what your animal is going to grow into. Now, the complicated part, because Desert Ghost is recessive, if you have if the breeder you're buying from bred a het to a het and produced a visual Desert Ghost, and the breeder doesn't have any pictures of the animals that produce those hets, then that kind of falls into a dilemma, right? Are you going to have a really nice high saturation Desert Ghost, which is what I like, or are you going to have something else with toned down coloration but is probably equally as clean? So it's really up in the air. When I bought my Desert Ghost, I made sure that the person only worked with a very nice vibrant line, just to make sure that I'm going to be able to produce the animals I envisioned, right? On an earlier video, I talked about setting up goals and envisioning an animal that you really want to produce, and I really want to produce a very high saturated Desert Ghost clown, right? That's one of the steps I want to take. If I buy into a line of Desert Ghost that doesn't give me that saturation, then why am I going into Desert Ghost to begin with, right? So this is just kind of food for thought. I have these talks a lot with the reptile people in my area. When I go to my local reptile store, I kind of shoot the shit with the owner and we talk about this type of thing. People just overlook a couple things that can have a big impact down the line, right? So I just saw that people really weren't talking about genetic lines, and hopefully this can clarify or make people aware that this is a thing that you should probably be paying attention to if you're into color. And of course, I'm sure different lines of like Black Pastel, Mojave, and Spot Nose are out there as well. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the video. This is some food for thought. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Subscribe, comment down below your particular favorite line of pastel or whatever else. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.